I've been experimenting with some accessory lenses on my Lumix LX7 and LX100, and I think the reason that I started this was simply because on the Ricoh GR you can use the GW-3 wide adapter to the GW-3 wide adapter to actually give you a wider field of view, and in this instance with the Ricoh GR it doesn't detract from the image quality at all. It's a really good piece of glass. So I was kind of curious as to whether I could do the similar sort of thing with the LX7 and the LX100. Now, the LX7 has a very similar facility to the LX5 I've had previously, in that you can remove ring on the front and add an accessory tube with a bayonet fitting like that, and then you've got a 52mm thread that you can put stuff on, whether it's filters or accessory lenses. So I thought I'd try some stuff. I should say at the outset I've ended up with a huge number of different stepping rings, stepping up and stepping down rings to sort some of this stuff out, and these are my findings. So to start with LX7, looking at the wide end of things, I tried the Ricoh GW-3 and it gives a pretty heavy vignette around the edge. Didn't work. So put that to one side. I then tried another piece of glass that I already had actually, which is the Konica Minolta, the much bigger Konica Minolta ACW-100, and that worked really well. So that was quite interesting. That gave an excellent result, and that takes the effective focal length out to 19.2mm, because that's a times 0.8 converter. So that was good. I did also try Sony VCL-HG0758. Is that number right? And that gave some vignetting and blurry edges and corners, not good. So there was another one I tried, which was the Panasonic VW-LW4307W, or something like that, and that didn't work very well either. At the wide end, that did give me the Konica Minolta ACW-100 as a good result. I then moved on with the LX7 to the telephoto end, to the teleconverter end, to see if I could extend beyond the 90mm that already gives. And I tried because I already had it, I tried the Sigma FT-1201. That gave an excellent result. That's a times 1.2 converter, so that takes the LX7 at its maximum reach out to an effective 108mm, up from 90. I tried the ACT-100, the Konica Minolta ACT-100. That's a times 1.5 teleconverter. So that takes the LX7 out to 135mm effective. That gave an excellent result. I tried the Ricoh TC-200M, which is another times 1.25 teleconverter. That gave an excellent result. So that also takes the LX7 out to 135mm. Interestingly, this Ricoh teleconverter also goes directly onto the Sigma DP3 Merrill, taking that out to 112mm effective. And it worked well on that. It worked surprisingly well. So that was a good result on the Tele end. So I've got a wide and a Tele good result on the LX7. I then moved on to the LX100. So that's a little bit more complicated because it's similar sort of fitting with the ring on the front and there's a bayonet underneath it, but the adapter tube is a Canon piece of kit. It's the Canon, it's called a conversion lens adapter, LA DC58H, and it's not quite, it doesn't quite fit without some modification. So you have to remove a small amount of material from around the inside so that it actually fits over the bayonet. Now it's quite a tight fit, and you can then turn it and it's down. So that's quite a tight fit. And it did require a little bit of modification, but it works. And that gives you a 58mm thread up front there. So I went through testing pretty much all the same stuff. And I discovered that at the wide end, nothing works at all. And part of the reason for that, if I switch this on, you might be able to see, the lens is a long way back there when it's at its wide end. When you zoom out, it's actually protruding. So I had to do some significant messing about with this, with some little extension rings on here to get the glass away from adapters and things like that. So it's all a bit of a faff on this camera. But the big problem with the wider end is that the lens is a long way back from the end of the converter. Now, what I also tried to get something to work at the wide end was actually there's a 43mm thread on the lens itself. So I did try some stuff on that, on the 43mm thread, whilst supporting the lens because some of this glassware is quite heavy. However, having said all that, there was nothing, not the GW-3, not the ACW-100, not the Panasonic VW-L blah blah blah, and not the Sony VCL-HG. None of them gave a good result on this. They were all vignetting and they were all blurry at the edges. And I've got a feeling that's because of the different sensor size in this over the LX7. I think it's partly because of the bigger sensor. But for whatever reason, at the wide end, I couldn't get anything to work satisfactorily at all. Always vignettes and a significant amount of blurring on some of them around the edges. And that was regardless of aspect ratios. I went through the different aspect ratios as well. So I don't think there's anything can be done on the wide end for this. Telephoto end is a slightly different story. And in fact, well, it is only a slightly different story because the one that works best on everything else, the Ricoh TC-200, actually gives a vignette, very minor, but it does give a vignette on the LX100. But the only thing that really, having gone through all of those, the telephoto stuff, the only thing that worked really well was the Sigma FT-1201. So that does take the LX100 out to an effective 90mm max from its 75. So I've got some images which show the kind of size and weight difference of some of these converters, and I've put a Fuji X100 with its converter, which goes from 35 to 50, in the background, just so that it's got some context. But some of the glass is big and some of it's quite heavy, and I have kind of written up the specs for these individual pieces of glass, and I'll perhaps put that in the description rather than trying to list it all on the screen. So there we have it. I've got a good result at the end of all of that. I've got a good result for the LX7 in terms of wide and tele, and I've got a reasonable result in terms of tele for the LX100, but nothing in terms of wide. So there we have it. That's it. I'm finished now. It's absolutely no more experimentation in terms of accessory lenses. For now, anyway. Sick of the sight of them.